So for picking up for part two, everything's been taken off for the automatic transmission, and I'm going to start going over, swapping over the parts for the manual. Alright, this is the one that came off of the automatic transmission. This is the one that came with the manual transmission. The only difference is there's these 3 extra dowels that come on this one. Otherwise, all the holes line up. I did just reference this by putting the bolts through the transmission. I'll use this one as a template. I think the difference is just got to be the oil pan. This is I kept my bolts organized, so this is going to be facing the back of the engine, so I'll just pull them out and put them in their corresponding holes. Each of the ones marked in blue are the aluminum bolts. They're going to get scrapped, and then you replace them with a new set. Because I'm not a crazy person, I did buy a new flywheel and clutch from Vallejo. It was a single mass conversion that installed without issue. Actually, installing the transition itself went smoothly. Everything looks like it lines up nicely, and using the new cross member provided with the manual transmission. Normally I love stuff from Harbor Freight, but I wouldn't recommend this transmission jack. It started leaning at the top and bending at the joints while I was using it. I'd probably get something nicer. This so far has kind of been my favorite thing about working on the Z4. There's actually so much room in the engine bay. This is looking down at the back of the engine where it meets the transmission. You can actually reach in and start threading all of the bolts that made up the back of the engine. So when you go to torque them down, it's a whole lot easier to do. Now actually installing the shift lever for real this time is pretty straightforward. Just threaded it through this rubber grommet. There are actually arrows here to tell you which way to orient it properly in the transmission tunnel. Next, there's a small foam piece that sits with this orientation underneath the shifter trim. And unfortunately, mine does have the plastic tabs that actually connected to the console cracked off, so I'm going to have to find a new one of these, and they're like $100, which is annoying. After getting the transmission bolted down, I did start installing the shifter linkage, and I did discover one problem. There are 2 aluminum tabs on the back of the transmission that these clips attach to, and on the left side, it was broken off. Luckily, I was able to ultimately get a zip tie around there and secure it. I also initially thought that I was missing one of the clips that holds the shifter linkage in place as well. Luckily mine had just fallen onto the floor, but this goes back to what I was saying about buying a complete kit. If you're buying all these little fasteners and hardware, you're probably spending another $100 easy. Next, I descended back into hell the footwell to install the hardline that goes from the master cylinder to the slave cylinder. I just had a piece of tape with a little grommet holding it in place. I listened to the original audio for this again. It's a lot of me grunting and breathing heavy. It's really depressing to listen to. The hardline's number 9 here in the diagram, and this is ultimately how everything gets plumbed up in the end. Getting this threaded through is a bit challenging. There's the brake booster that basically sits right behind here, so you try to have to kind of finagle it through to get it in the direction that you want it to go. A quick aside, I did do a delete for the delayed release valve for the slave cylinder. It sits between the hard line and the pressure hose right here. My understanding is that it's basically just narrower in diameter on the inside, so it kind of helps delay the release of the clutch to make it smoother, but some people say it's kind of annoying, so we'll delete it and see how it goes. So with the slave cylinder and pressure hose installed, I was trying to get a better sense of where exactly the rigid line was supposed to run. I couldn't clearly see any diagrams of exactly the path it was supposed to take. So my initial attempt to was sticking out above this power cable and just went below the steering coupler. So I figured this isn't where it sits because it was sticking out so far. So I figured I had to get it routed where it's going to go underneath this power cable and be able to attach to a small dowel that was sticking out of the transmission tunnel here. Getting this in took an hour. I had to cut this off here just to loosen this up a little bit to be able to squeeze it through. I assume there's got to be some sort of mount that goes there. And there is. It's number 20 on this diagram, and I'll show the install later. With the actual clutch line going in the right orientation, this is how that rubber grommet fits into that hole. It holds it fairly securely there. It makes it pretty easy to get into the back of the master cylinder. With it attached to the master cylinder, there's typically a small metal clip that then goes in there to hold it in place, and this I actually was missing. So I can only find this online as this little kit, $13 just for this single clip. I thought I would check with my local BMW dealership, even more absurd, $33. I tried junkyards and couldn't find it anywhere, so just had to suck it up and order it online. After waiting a few days, the little clip to attach this hardline finally came in, and this is what it looks like. It took me a while to figure out the exact orientation to get it to sit securely. Attaching in this orientation held it in place fairly well. As for the drive shaft, I used the front section from the manual transmission and reused the back section from my automatic. As my support bearing looked like it had been replaced, it was in pretty good shape. A little bit of this helped a lot way in the installation. Everything bolted up smoothly and the install of the transmission really isn't too bad. Working on this project has given me even more respect for people who make YouTube videos for a living. I don't know how people actually work on cars and create content in real time. So everything was going great until it wasn't. I had to work for a couple days and I come back and see this on the ground. This oil leak is coming right from the bottom of the transmission, so I figured this is either coming from the oil pan gasket or from a leaking rear main seal. The good news is, now making this a few weeks later, this has continued to leak, so I'm relatively certain it's coming from the oil pan gasket, just because I don't think there's going to be oil saturating that rear main seal since I haven't started the car. This was definitely a low point in the project for me. Prior to this, I'd spent about a month replacing the oil cooler housing gasket, a whole bunch of radiator hoses, so it was just dealing with oil and coolant for so long. I'm just really hoping to be done with that. Just as I was cursing BMW engineers and thinking about giving up, I saw something on TikTok, don't tell my wife, that the toke that comes with the car actually screws into the top of the cylinder head, and then this is how it's designed so you can jack up the front of the engine. This is what you need to do to change the oil pan gasket. So back to Harbor Freight to get an engine brace. However, on the Z4, there's no great place on the fender or in this little metal ledge to be able to actually support the engine bar. I actually saw a video where you put it on the brace in the back and then put in the front radiator support to support the engine. However, to put my brace back on, I have to take off those bolts, which would cause the wheel to fall off, so I'm going to be waiting. I tried my engine hoist as well, and of course, that's not going to reach, so the oil pan gasket's going to wait. Next up, I tackle the wiring, and things get a little bit worse.